Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our candidate forum today. I would like to thank Representatives Amanda Hemmingsen-Jaeger and Ethan Chow for being here, and for our candidates, Teresa Whitson and
Teresa Whitson.
Teresa Whitson and Dwight Dorau for being here. I appreciate this. And just you guys being here today and taking the time says a lot for our community, so thank you. My name is Laurie Staiger. I'm the President and CEO of the Woodbury Area Chamber of Commerce. This forum is a forum, it is not a debate, and it is being put on by the Woodbury Area Chamber of Commerce. Just a quick update on our guidelines and format for this forum. The Woodbury Area Chamber of Commerce provides a platform to allow candidates to share their positions and viewpoints. The Chamber is a neutral party in these forums and does not endorse any candidate. The event is being filmed by South Washington County Telecommunications Commission, and a link to this recorded session will be on the Chamber website and available for viewing. Questions were generated by the Woodbury Government Affairs Committee as well as submitted by members at large. There will not be time allotted for questions from attendees here today, but we ask that the candidates make themselves available if there is any questions after this event, and it will not be recorded. Candidates will each have up to 2 minutes for opening statements and closing statements, and for each question. All candidates are being provided the same questions, and we will alternate who answers the question first, and you were all given up to 2 minutes to respond. We understand that 2 minutes is a lot of time, so don't feel that you have to take the entire time. But when you are at 1 minute and 30 seconds, I will raise my hand just to let you know you have 30 seconds remaining. If you get to the 2 minute mark, I will say stop. Candidates do not need to use the full time. And with that, I will turn it over to Gina Kazmerski, who is the owner of Image 360, and she is also the chair of our Government Affairs Committee and will be moderating today. So Gina, take it over.
Very good. So we're going to start by doing your opening statements. You have 2 minutes to do that. I'm going to go ahead and start with Ethan first on that, and we've all agreed that I'm going to be using your first names as we go through.
And which camera am I looking at?
Lonnie?
I'm not looking at any.
Lonnie? Which camera should they look at?
Just talk to the crowd. It won't matter because the cameras are going to change, so I can't give you a specific camera.
Okay.
Just talk to the crowd, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome to the forum, everyone. My name is State Representative Ethan Cha, and I represent 47B. As your current state representative, I serve on 4 committees and 1 commission for the state of Minnesota. It just so happens that I serve on the Committee of Commerce, Housing, Agriculture, and Legacy. And also, I am on the Pensions and Retirement Committee for the state of Minnesota. I am very happy and excited to be here and look forward to this debate, and thank you.
Thank you. Dwight?
Yes, hello. My name is Dwight Dorau, and I'm a candidate for House District 47B in Woodbury. I'm a husband, a father, a retired military veteran, and an inner-city school teacher. I'm also a chamber member and I'm a very pro-business candidate. I'm running for this office to restore some moderation back to our state. In the past 2 years, the Democrats have allowed no bipartisanship whatsoever, and we all know that Minnesota operates best when we have a robust debate and clear checks and balances in our government. Sadly, so much damage has already been done to our small businesses and their employees. I'm also running to bring some bold new ideas and actions to the legislature. Please go to votefordwight.com to view my contract with Minnesota, which outlines several high-priority items that I will get done while working with all members of the legislature, not just one party. Finally, I would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum. I really appreciate all the work you do for your small businesses and for your employees and for your customers. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Hemmingsen-Jaeger. I'm your current state representative for District 47A, which is the communities of Southern Maplewood and Woodbury. I just want to thank everybody for coming to the audience, for those watching online, for the Woodbury Area Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum, and to Gina for moderating today, and of course the South Washington County Telecommunications Commission for videotaping this and allowing so many others to be able to view this forum. I've been honored to represent South Maplewood and Woodbury for the past 2 years, and it's no secret we've come off of a historic session. We've started the process for paid family medical leave for all Minnesotans so people can have the ability to care for themselves and for their families. We took action to address climate change and protect our environment for future generations to come. And we enacted free breakfasts and lunches for all school kids so they can focus on learning and to help parents with their bottom line every week. Locally, I authored and co-authored direct funding for the Central Park renovations, as well as a sales tax exemption on construction materials so that we can get that started and renovated soon. Actually, it's already in progress. I've also worked with homeowners to allow solar panels to be put on rooftops in neighborhoods, as well as maintain our family childcare in homes. And I've also partnered with the Woodbury Police Department to increase regulations and disclosures at our cryptocurrency kiosks to protect our community members, especially our senior citizens. And these last two initiatives, I'm very proud were done in bipartisan support, and I enjoy that part of my job to try to find areas of common ground between myself and people across the aisle. I'd like to continue to use my education in science and policy, along with my legislative experience, to continue to advocate for the people of 47A. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Teresa Whitson. I am the Republican candidate for House District 47A. And today you will get a rare treat from politicians, short speeches. Did you know that the Minnesota budget has ballooned by over 40% in the last 2 years because of total DFL control? Of course, to do that, they had to keep a senator who is accused of a violent felony voting. That is actually the senator for this district. So Governor Walz asked her to resign. The DFL chair asked her to resign, but our two representatives have not asked her to resign, and I wonder why. But they also failed to pass the bonding bill this last year. And other crazy things have happened, and my opponent voted for all of them. Just one thing, for instance. Because of DFL legislation in Minnesota schools, now every single subject is now going to be required to have an ethnic studies component. So yes, every subject is going to be shot through with racism discussions and victimhood oppressor identification. Half of Minnesota students don't even read or do math at grade level, but this was the DFL priority. That's valuable class time, valuable teacher energy, and valuable student attention just to satisfy their DEI goals. Minnesota needs Republican common sense leadership, not wasted taxpayer dollars on progressive social engineering.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started on the questions. This time I'm going to start with Teresa. We'll move this way. First question, what does a pro-business climate look like to you? Do you consider Minnesota to be a pro-business state? Why or why not? And what are the implications?
No, I don't consider certain aspects of Minnesota to be a pro-business state because of we have one of the highest corporate tax rates in the country. That makes it one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world. And the implications are that you've got the foot of government on the neck of business. There have been businesses that have succeeded all through our history. Ford, developing the assembly line, didn't require government subsidies. There are so many climate change industries that require so many public government subsidies. As it stands now, people are leaving Minnesota. Businesses are leaving Minnesota because of the taxes. It's hard to get employees because they don't want necessarily to be here where where businesses are saddled with so many extra guidelines, regulations, mandates. It just goes on. And the new one that just came out, the family paid and leave time, is going to have devastating results down the road on businesses.
All right, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. This summer, Minnesota is ranked the 6th best state for business by CNBC. So I think Minnesota is a pro-business climate, and that's because we invest in our people. We invest in our innovators, our entrepreneurs, and our workers. We invest in our education system. We have a great education system that gives us the future workers and the workforce we need to have the skilled and professional employees that our businesses need. We have good health care, because we know that if we have healthy workers who can take care of themselves and their families, they're going to be able to go to work more. If we have healthy small business owners, then they can feel comfortable taking the time they need to take care for themselves while keeping their business open for their clients and their patrons. We are doing things to creatively address the workforce shortage, which has been felt sector-wide. And I'm proud that businesses are coming to Minnesota and staying in Minnesota.
Thank you, Dwight.
Yes, so when I was kind of doing a little bit of reading up for this forum today, I went to the Minnesota Chamber website, and their goal, it says, is for the Minnesota Chamber to lead the statewide business community to advance pro-business, responsible public policy that creates jobs and grows the economy, and provides member services to address evolving business needs. So as I think about that, what are the responsible policies that have happened in these past couple of years? We've seen a surplus of nearly $20 billion be flushed away. We've seen the taxes on our individuals and our businesses climb to the top. Minnesota's 9.8%. We replaced New Jersey as the highest business tax state. Wow, that's crazy. And the ironic thing about it is 2 years ago, when this current legislature began, we had that surplus, but we also had the most incredible inflation in 40 years. What a great time to help out workers and businesses. But what did we do instead? We spent it and we created a fiscal cliff that is going to arrive in the 26-27 legislative session because my opponent and his colleagues voted for that. They voted for one of the highest tax increases we have seen in Minnesota. That is not responsible, and I would like to highlight that to all the chamber members. Thank you.
Ethan?
Yes. What does a pro-climate look like? For most of you, I've been self-employed for over 15 years as a small business owner. I currently sit on the Commerce Committee for the state of Minnesota. When I think of a pro-business climate, I think of healthy communities. I think of good schools and education, infrastructure, investment, healthcare options for families, childcare options for families. Those are the foundation and fundamental of a strong community that will attract business and that will retain business in Minnesota. We talk about the investments we've made in Minnesota. And for most of you, if you read up on U.S. News, Minnesota ranks the 4th best state to live in the United States of America. We're the 4th best state. Iowa, Nebraska, North Dakota ranks 15, 16, and I believe 12. We're number 4. It means that investments that we've made has improved the lives and quality of Minnesotans. And while I'm here at City Hall, I also want to highlight that Woodbury is the number 1 city in Minnesota to live in. It's the 15th in the United States of America. And with that, I want to thank this community in the audience. I want to thank city council members and the mayor for the great work they've done to make us number 1. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, we're going to start with you, Amanda. We'll move this direction, so Dwight will be the second one. What ideas do you have for making private sector businesses in Minnesota more competitive? Are there policies that will help in this effort? Amanda.
Thank you for the question. When it comes to making private sector businesses competitive, I would really like to continue working with our local initiatives. So Woodbury just started their destination marketing organization, which I think is a great idea to bring people in. Also support organizations and initiatives like the Woodbury Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to represent the people of South Maplewood and Woodbury, and the best way I can do that is by listening and intentionally engaging with people in our community. We passed a really cool initiative, I think 2 years ago with Explore Minnesota, They are doing an initiative to bring film industry into Minnesota, which has already been taking off and seeing great success. So I love to listen and hear creative ideas, innovative ideas to bring things in. And as a scientist, I love to get all of the information I can, differing perspectives to make sure we can do something that is thorough, comprehensive, and implementable.
Thank you. Dwight?
Yes, okay, before I get to this, I want to highlight my opponent talking about all the investments that he made in Minnesota. Investments in education, I think he said housing, transportation, whatever he said. Realize, when he says he is investing in these things, he's not talking about money from his own pocket. He's talking about increasing your taxes. The metro area sales tax for transportation up 0.75%. The housing tax up 25%. The motor vehicle sales tax from 6.5 to 8.5%. Excuse me, to 6.85%. The gasoline tax that he voted for to raise it and then peg it to inflation for the future. And then also we have a metro area delivery fee of 50 cents for any purchase over $100. My opponent is a big spender, not a big investor. So getting to the current question, how do we make it more competitive? Well, you know, about 110 years ago or so, Calvin Coolidge said that the business of America is business. And I wish it could be that way, but with all these mandates and all this spending, it seems like the business of the DFL government is government-mandated businesses. And I really believe that we need to change this around. We know the fiscal cliff is coming. They raised the taxes by $10 billion. They spent the surplus, and there is no fix for this other than something, I'm out of time, I'll talk about it in my next segment. Thank you.
Okay. Ethan?
Yes, how can we make the private sector more competitive? First of all, from the support of the legislation and making sure, ensuring that the legislative policy that we put through Commerce is going to be friendly to our local business. It's listening to your local community. And I'll speak from a small business owner. The things that got me through and allowed me to stay in business was the community. And if we continue to invest in our community like we have, and I won't talk about the billions and millions of dollars, the millions of dollars that we've invested back into Woodbury, because we did secure a bonding bill in 2023 that brought in $7.5 million for Central Park renovation. And me and my colleague, Amanda, did author and chief author a bill for a $7 million bonding for the water tower. And you know who did not vote for that? None of the Republicans in the House of Representatives voted for a bonding bill. And so when we talk about not getting a bonding bill done, I want this audience to know that we didn't get a bonding bill because the Republicans, 0 votes. And so, as your state representative, I will continue to champion the bonding bills and the monies coming into Washington County and Woodbury. Thank you.
Thank you. And Teresa, same question?
Ideas for making public sector businesses in Minnesota more competitive. The first thing I would do is just write it down, claw back. Claw back the things that have been done to businesses in Minnesota as far as taxes and rules and red tape and regulations and mandates and everything that every random department seems to be able to throw at a business. There are 27 million small businesses in the United States. That is, they represent 50% of the GDP of this country. Small businesses especially are the powerhouses of Minnesota. They are the powerhouse for Woodbury as well. And we need to do more. I think that there's been a lot of foolish manipulation by government into business. Businesses do business well. Government is not nimble. It does not respond quickly to the markets. And we need to allow businesses to do more to run their own organizations.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Dwight first. Ethan will be second, and then Teresa, and then Amanda. Question is regarding taxes and spending. Due to large increases in government spending in 2023, the budget forecast now shows state spending growth outpacing tax revenue growth. If the state were to encounter a budget deficit, how would you balance the state's budget? Would you cut spending or increase taxes? Please be specific about the changes that you would support.
I notice a key word in there. It's called spending, which my opponent here tends to call investing. Maybe we have a different financial background, but that's a very good question. And the budget does indeed show growth outpacing tax revenue by a tremendous amount. There's no way that we can keep up. So the second part of that question is, if the state were to encounter a budget deficit, well, you can pretty much write that down. We will, because we do not have the money unless we follow some very pro-growth policies here in Minnesota that could help. I would like to point out that my opponent has not worked with Republicans in his 2 years in office, so maybe that's something you might want to try next time, Ethan. And also, as far as listening to the local community, I'm not sure who you mean by that, but I really haven't seen you at too many of the city council or local meetings here, so maybe you could come to some of those and learn a little bit more about the rest of us in the local community. I would definitely go for spending cuts. My plan on my website, votefordwight.com, I have a contract with Minnesota. We have a 9.8% business tax, and we need to cut that by 20%. So we get on par with Wisconsin, who is at 7.9%. We absolutely have to do that to stay competitive. And then I'd also like to cut some of the taxes for some of the workers as well. We have a lot of young people in Woodbury and throughout Minnesota who are really struggling, 18 to 35-year-olds, paying for rent, having to move back home with mom and dad, not being able to afford a mortgage or groceries or gasoline. So I'm calling for cuts in the lowest two tax brackets as well. And if we do all these cuts together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ethan.
I want to address the issue of bipartisanship. I have a legislative record, which my opponent does not have, so you can look up my votes. I want to talk about sitting on the Pensions and Retirement Committee for the state of Minnesota. Our pensions bill that I supported in committee passed with bipartisan support, 134 votes to 0. That's bipartisanship. You know what bipartisanship is? Sitting on the Agriculture Committee for the state of Minnesota, carrying the Grain Indemnity Fund for $10 million to fund farmers in greater Minnesota to protect grain silos across the state. That, my friends and community, is bipartisanship. To address this question about whether I would raise taxes or cut taxes, of course, my job as your state representative is not only to make laws, but to balance the budget. And if we are in a shortfall of our budget, we will have to cut some of our spending, allocate resources to others where it's needed, and remap the budget for the state of Minnesota. That is my job. And when that moment shall arrive, I shall be ready to balance the state budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa.
The question says, due to large increases in government spending in 2023, I would add foolish to that. Due to large, foolish increases in government spending in 2023, the budget forecast now shows the state spending growth outpacing tax revenue growth. Then it says if. I don't think it's an if. There's going to be a budget deficit. Dwight said you could write it down. You could write it in ink. I would say cut, cut, cut. Cut departments, cut boards, committees, grants, aid to non-citizens perhaps. Specifics would be difficult at this point for me to be able to enumerate, but it's a Jabba the Hutt gluttonous government right now that is greedy and takes every tax dollar it can get its hands on. I think the Minnesota government needs a diet.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
Thank you. Our increases in government spending are reflective of our increases in our Minnesota population and our increases in services to help those Minnesotans. We've seen increased need for long-term care, nursing homes, special services to help our kids learn in school, healthcare for seniors. Like, these are the things, if we want to take care of our people, we need to make sure we're putting resources and money to take care of those people. With regards to the budget forecast, this is not something new to my colleagues and me. We were looking at our forecast 9 months ago back in January, and we, from the beginning of before even session started, we're saying we need to be aware of this. Our checkbook is showing that our paycheck is not going to be enough for what we need to spend it on, so we need to be cognizant and thoughtful as we go through this 2024 session, and I believe we did. Since then, I've been continuing to get monthly updates from our fiscal analysts and MMB, and it is showing revenue above what was our February forecast. So we're doing better than we thought. I look forward to seeing what the November forecast holds, and we will make decisions and determinations when we get that most recent data. Representative Cha said it right. It is our job as legislators to balance the budget. And if the budget is out of balance, I am prepared to have conversations and to make difficult decisions to mitigate against the amount of harm we do to community, but to make the budget balanced. And lastly, I think we need to look at taxing those who are profiting and price gouging our middle class people. Our middle class is where our bulk and our strength of our economy lies, and they deserve to have the paycheck to make ends meet. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to start with Ethan, and then we'll go Teresa, Amanda, Dwight. The Minnesota corporate tax rate of 9.8% is one of, if not the highest in the nation, depending on which data you're looking at with New Jersey. Do you support or oppose reducing the corporate tax rate? Please be specific in terms of the changes that you would support. And we'll start with Ethan.
Yes, I would support in reducing our corporate tax rate, but not at the cost of Minnesotans. Meaning, the budgetary of our caucus is to invest in education, is to give back to our communities. And I'm going to talk about what we are securing for our city. When we talk about investing back into our community with these corporate taxes, which is part of it, we need to look at the impacts of communities. We need to look at how many dollars is going back into our communities that is being collected and allocated. And so, without getting too much into it, we can look at the $17 million invested in environmental that's coming back into Washington County, into Woodbury. We can look at the $1.4 million that we invested into affordable housing, homelessness prevention, local housing aid. You know, look at the $4.4 million that we gave back to Washington County for housing. These are just some of the highlights. And back to the question, yes, I would support in a reduction of corporate tax rate for the state of Minnesota. But also, I will not compromise the children, the families, and the future of our state. Thank you.
Okay. Teresa.
Do I support reducing the corporate tax rate? I just feel like on The Simpsons, duh, of course. The Minnesota corporate tax rate is so high, it makes them less competitive. Because they have higher corporate tax rate, they have the option to handle that in a lot of ways. Sometimes they don't expand their business. Sometimes they choose to move their business out of the state, or maybe they hire fewer employees, or they're not able to give them wage increases. What was the other thing I wrote down? they could possibly reduce prices if they're corporate taxes, because taxes get passed on also to the consumer. That puts money that employees could spend other places. When you buy something, it might cost less, and then you could use that discretionary money, your discretionary money, not the government's discretionary money. They take our money, our taxes, every way they can, and think they're smarter than we are on how it should be spent. For instance, schools. I think school money ought to follow the students, so parents can choose where their kids could go to school, instead of the government mandating exactly how things must be run, and exactly, to the detriment of our students lately. Our students were out of school a lot longer than a lot of other students around the country, and their test scores show it.
Thank you. Amanda?
Thank you. Again, our tax revenue is the revenue we collect to provide services to our people and to our communities. When we invest in our communities, we make Minnesota the great state that it is. It comes with clean air, clean water, clean soil, our beautiful parks that we have and love. It maintains our roads and bridges. We know with Minnesota winters, our bridges and roads get beat up a lot. And when I drive through other states and in other states, I'm so grateful for the way our roads and bridges are maintained. It goes to things like transit, so we can be more creative and better about moving people around Minnesota, making sure our senior citizens have abilities to move around the community, making sure people with disabilities are able to fully take part in our community. And it invests in education. Again, we need good, solid education to make sure that we are preparing our workforce for the future. And it's because of these investments and policies that Minnesota actually had some of the lowest inflation rates in the country immediately following our legislative session in 2023.
Thank you. And finally, Dwight.
Thank you. You know, Ethan, that's the greatest speech I've ever heard from you in the 2 years that you've been in office here. You mentioned that you are now a bipartisan, voting with the Republicans, although arguably you picked a very easy one, that subject that all people could agree on, as it was unanimous in dealing with agriculture. You said that you're going to balance the budget when the time arrives. That's amazing. I think that's wonderful. I would just like to say that we're going to welcome you tonight into the Republican Party, my friend. Welcome. You talked about the 17% of taxes that went back to Washington County. Well, why not leave it with the hardworking families in the first place? Why tax it just to give it back? I mean, I think it's a lot better for working families that are struggling, trying to make ends meet, to keep the money in their own pocket to begin with. So I would like to say that also hearing you say that you would love to cut the corporate tax rate, that is very heartwarming to me. I agree with Ethan Shaw that we need to cut our corporate tax rate. 9.8% is simply too high, and Ms. Kazmerski, I do believe that it's the #1 in the nation now, because New Jersey actually cut by a few percent. So we are #1, yay, Minnesota's #1. But we need to cut this back, and we really need to get on par with Wisconsin. 20% is the logical thing to do. Most of our population is right here, right next to Wisconsin. So thank you very much.
Thank you. As we move to the next question, we're going to start with Ethan and move to Dwight, moving in this direction. If the state continues to generate large budget surpluses, would you support that surplus, or would you support changes that allow for a more balanced budget? What specifically would you support or change?
So if we were to have more surplus, of course, I would support a more balanced budget. You know, my job as a state legislator is to budget the state spending or investment, in my word. I want to address about bipartisanship. Bipartisanship on the agriculture community, and working with my colleagues to have their buy-in to support industry in greater Minnesota. Dwight, I'm not sure if you understand the agriculture atmosphere of Minnesota and Minnesotans and what the needs are in greater Minnesota. And that what it takes to sit on a committee to carry a bill that invests 1/3 of its budget to farmers in the state of Minnesota. In fact, I don't even think you know that I'm a farmer or was a farmer. And, you know, back to this question, yes, I support a more balanced budget. And how would I specifically do that? Yes, by lowering tax rate. You heard me say it. I would. If we had an overly large size surplus, then yes, we can address that. Thank you.
Dwight, next question.
Yeah, hey, Ethan, maybe you don't know also, but I grew up on a small farm in Aiken County. I'm not sure what type of farmer you are, but I was dairy, beef, horses, and hogs. And it would be interesting. We should share some farm growing up stories afterwards. That'd be great. My point is that you were deciding in a bipartisan fashion with a committee that was very sold on what the ultimate idea would be. How many times did you vote against Republicans on the floor, Ethan? That's the real question. And by the way, I'm not sure who asked this question. If the state continues to generate large budget surpluses, not gonna happen, not gonna happen. We have a fiscal cliff approaching. You guys increased the budget by 40% and you have no means to get us out of it. So let me talk a little bit about how we can fix that. We can cut the corporate tax rate by 20%. We can encourage our businesses to grow, to hire more people, to expand, which also hires more businesses and more people. Those added people get higher wages and more of them come into the workforce and they pay taxes. And this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is the only way out of this right now. This is a approaching crisis like we haven't seen in Minnesota in a long time. So, Ethan, thank you for your bipartisan work on the Agriculture Committee. My dad still lives up there. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And Amanda?
Thank you. I think we need to remember, first of all, that the 2023 budget surplus of $17 billion was unprecedented and very unique and very much an outlier when it comes to surpluses and deficits. We need to remember that most of that money was federal COVID dollars from the federal government, one-time money. So, and then also with that, we need to remember that we are coming off of 10 years of neglect to our education and our services. Let me make sure I get this right. The end of the 2022 session, so in spring of 2022, the Republican-led Senate did not want to agree and come together to pass any bills because they wanted to keep the $9 billion at the time should they get elected into the majority for the 2023 session. So I think we need to keep that historical context into question when we go forth thinking about surpluses. That being said, should a surplus occur in the future, I'm very scientific, I'm very open-minded, and I would be creative and responsive to the needs of the people in our community. Thanks.
Thank you. And Teresa?
So I agree that part of the dollars that we had were federal, not 17 billion. Our state overtaxes. It has a history of having surpluses. It has a history of continually raising taxes. I think there's, that those large budget surpluses will be coming to the end because there have been departments put in place, management things added to our government that are going to continue to suck up money. And right now, those budget surpluses are not going to be in the future because of the cliff that we're headed up to because of all the spending and because of all the overtaxing. I would also question to get to a balanced budget, you need to look seriously and carefully at the priorities for your own family. And sometimes you need to make hard choices, tough choices. And this last session, the DFL decided not to make any hard choices. They made generous choices.
Okay. We're going to move on to workplace mandates. We're going to start with Dwight and move towards Amanda and go that direction. What factors should play into determining wages and benefits in the private sector, and who should be responsible for setting these parameters, government or business owners? Dwight, you're up.
Okay, yeah. So there are some really good things that government can do with regard to workplace factors, right? So, you look back throughout our history, OSHA, different agencies like that. So it is very important. Some of the things that we have dealt with in Minnesota and other states specifically throughout the years, though, has been, for example, minimum wage laws, which, normally, in a normal economy, that would be a good gauge for all of us to consider. But consider the inflation of the last 4 years and its impact in the state of Minnesota, and how the minimum wage, I think you guys just raised it again, but it's not even close to keeping up with inflation. And so some of these old paradigms need to be looked at in a better way. And I think the way to do that is to get back to more private industry, private company, small business considerations for how to do things better. And it's not just about wages, it's about medical care. There are some good things I actually like about paid family leave, which is something that these two voted on, but there's also many carve-outs and exclusions that they should have worked with, Ethan, in a bipartisan fashion with the Republicans, some common sense changes to make it a better bill. And that's why I want to be different when I'm the representative for this district, because I will listen to both sides, not just on an agriculture bill. I'm going to listen on everything, especially when it comes to business in Minnesota.
Thank you. Amanda?
Thank you. I actually think that there can be a balance. So I understand that wages and benefits can be used as levers for private business owners to get recruitment and as well as retention. But I'm also a union worker, and I understand too that we need to make sure workers that are paid fairly and that they have safe working conditions. So again, this is where I really come back to collaboration and listening to understand, so we can try to find that balance together.
Good. Thank you. Teresa?
The first word that caught my eye in that sentence, what factors should play into determining wages and benefits at the private sector, is private. I think businesses ought to be given more leverage in how they run their own businesses rather than the intimidation sometimes that goes on through the government onto businesses. Whenever minimum wage laws increase the minimum wage, employers have to let people go. I mean, if you look at what's happened in California, they go to more automatic job performances, replacing people with machines. They have employees go to more part-time, so they don't cross some threshold where required benefits are kicked in. If you left businesses to run their businesses and people freedom to work where they want to work. Nobody's obligated to work at a certain business. If you don't like the wage, if you don't like the benefits, go get a job someplace else. It's not the government's job to always nanny every aspect of our lives and every aspect of a business. Too often, the more government gets involved, they choose the winners and losers. They choose the businesses or the business owners or the industries that fits their politics, and it shouldn't be allowed. It ought to be left more for the businesses. And again, as I said before, government is not nimble and is not responsive to market change because of politics.
Thank you. And Ethan?
Yes, I want to thank my opponent, Dwight. I will continue to champion farmers and greater Minnesotans.
Thank you.
And by the way, you know what type of farmer I am? I'll give you an opportunity to learn more about me and everybody else. I raised heifers and steers. I did hay. I did Berkshire hogs, guineas, goats, and lambs. And I actually ride quarter horses and farrier my own horses. That's the kind of farmer I am. And I'm not a first-generation farmer. My parents were farmers. As refugees, we came to America. We live in subsidized housing, and we didn't have any land. But you know what? My parents had a 1-acre plot of land, which they continued to farm for a very long time. And that's why I care about farmers. When we talk about government and business owners and who should be responsible, I'm going to speak from my experience as a mortgage broker who got caught up in the financial crisis of 2007. Yes, I want the government to stay out of my business. But when the industry doesn't have the oversight that it needs, like the lending industry and the subprime industry, I myself, as a business owner, a small mortgage broker, lost my business, lost my house. And so there needs to be a balance of both so that we can have healthy communities and continue to support our small business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another question in the workplace mandate section. We'll start with Amanda and then move towards Teresa, then Ethan, then Dwight. Question is, do you think our state workplace mandate is a level the playing field between large and small employers? Should the state provide small business exemptions to certain state-imposed workplace mandates? Starting with Amanda.
Thank you. This is a really interesting question. So first off, I'm actually the daughter of a small business owner, and I do think there is a big difference between large and small businesses. And even though I'm a geneticist and policy analyst, I really appreciate my colleagues and constituents' experience and expertise to help identify places of concern with bills or laws coming to the floor. But then through our conversation, we talk about possible solutions. We talk to get down to what is the problem that we're facing and that we're experiencing. And this has gone a long way with our Paid Family Medical Leave Act. We had colleagues on the DFL side who were small business owners, who were micro business owners, and we had conversations about, hey, we agree with this idea and we think it should be law, but like you got to help these small businesses, these micro businesses. And we did. We put resources. We made different tiers for different exemptions. And that is what coming together in collaboration is all about. And that's what creates comprehensive and thorough policy. And that's what I would like to continue to do.
Thank you. Teresa.
I think the assumption that there should be more, that there are so many state mandates on businesses right now, large businesses and small businesses. How many and where does it end? The profit margin on small businesses are very low. Right now, for some family childcare businesses, their profit margin is approaching zero. We have a family childcare crisis, and part of the reason from childcare people, employers that I've talked to, is the rules, the regs, the red tape, the paperwork. It's just, it never ends. And every time they turn around, there's just another rule or something that's been applied that makes it very difficult to function as a small business. It's every small business, well, maybe that's not true. I was going to say every small business dreams of being large, but some people are very happy with running their small businesses. But you know, for a lot of small businesses start off small and because of a great idea allowed to function without having their business manipulated, are allowed to grow into huge businesses. Minnesota has some of like 3M and Pillsbury, so many of those started off as small businesses and grew because they were allowed to innovate, not because they had government running things for them or telling them how to run their business. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethan.
I'm sorry, what question are we on?
Do you think our state workplace mandate is a level the playing field between large and small employers? Should the state provide small business exemptions to certain Should the state provide small business exemptions to certain state-imposed workplace mandates on those small businesses?
Absolutely. To support small business, we should. You know, we should make accommodations, exemptions, and continue to look into ways to support our local business and small business owners in the state of Minnesota. And so that is the answer to that question. But I also want to add, you know, because my opponent keeps talking about my bipartisanship, so I want to address that so we can be clear. I want to be clear to the viewers in the audience that Ethan Cha is a Democrat. He is endorsed by the DFL. And my opponent is a Republican with the GOP party. And that's okay, because you know why? When he talks about bipartisanship, maybe he didn't look at my legislative record on the Pensions and Retirement Committee. Maybe he didn't see that that pension bill that passed by 134-0, and on that commission, there's 5 Republican senators, 2 senators who are 3 senators and 2 House GOP members that sit on the committee with us. And on that committee, we fight for police, troopers, volunteer firefighters, correctional officers, state workers, and teachers. If there's a bipartisan commission, that would be the State Pensions and Retirement, LCPR, for the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Dwight.
Yes, thank you. So, Ethan, you just mentioned as part of the question that you would favor reducing or eliminating mandates on small businesses. And my question to you would be, why didn't you do it? You've been there for 2 years. You had the chance to do that, and yet you didn't listen to any bipartisan inputs on any of those bills. And to work on the retirement committee is a very nonpartisan place to be. Everybody wants that to succeed, as you all know, with that many people voting in favor of it. How about on the floor, Ethan, for floor votes? How many times can you tell us you voted in a bilateral way with the GOP? I would say the answer would be next to none. Every single time, you do have a record, Ethan. We can see it, okay? And you are not very bipartisan from what I can see on your record. You may have voted on a few committees, maybe 2, you've mentioned 2, the agriculture and the pension, but voting straight down the line, hard line, non-bipartisan, on the floor is what you are all about. And you know that, and you should be proud of your record. But, you know, you are kind of coming our way a little bit tonight, so I'm kind of curious as to why you're doing that. You mentioned that you had lost everything during that crisis, and so I feel bad for you there. I hope you've got it back. I hope you were able to keep your farmland here in Minnesota. And if you ever need me to come up and help you do some calving in the spring, I'd be happy to do so.
All right, thank you.
All right. Our last question is going to happen about health, or is going to be about health care, and then after that, we'll move to the closing statements. This time, we're going to start with Teresa, and we'll move to Ethan, Dwight, and Amanda. How can the state best support health care benefits for all Minnesota residents in a way that keep costs in line and still offers some level of universal coverage for all residents? Okay. And starting with Teresa.
It's interesting to me, in a way that keeps costs in line. And you know, government has never been good at that. Government is never good at keeping costs in line. The DFL voted, they've got a new Senate palace that's being built, and they've $750 million. But tell you what, by the time that Senate building is furnished and occupied, with the way things are going, it's going to cost $1 billion of Minnesota taxes, and the DFL pushed that through. When did providing universal health care for all residents become a given? There's a phrase from a movie, it says, if you build it, they will come. And you know, around the country and around the world, Minnesota is known for its generous benefits. Generous benefits. They come from other parts of the country to come to Minnesota to soak them up. Not necessarily hardworking people coming to soak it up. They're coming for the extra benefits. They're coming for the handouts. They're coming from across the border to Minnesota for the handouts of hard-earned Minnesota taxpayers. And I have a best friend that works in emergency room. She said it is overwhelmed with people coming in, not for real serious things, but because they know they can get treated there for free.
Okay, thank you. Ethan?
Thank you, Dwight, for continuously pushing me to work in bipartisan fashion. So I'm going to give you one more, right? So in this past legislative session, we have a Republican bill to allow lane splitting in the state of Minnesota. Well, guess who stood up on the floor to support such legislation, which will be law now in 2025? I did. And I'll continue to do so where I can. But make no mistake, I am a Democrat sitting in the DFL party. I will prioritize my caucus, and I will prioritize this district, and I will continue to work with my city council, my mayor, my county commissioners, and all of the residents in Woodbury to make Woodbury a better, thriving place to live. To this question, healthcare. On the Commerce Commission, we passed legislation to put cap limits on prescription drugs. We continue to work in a bipartisan fashion to tackle healthcare issues across the aisle. Healthcare is part of healthy families. It's part of building a community. And as your state legislator, I will continue to work in that sector so that healthcare is affordable for all families across the spectrum, and especially for our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwight?
Yes, so for healthcare, I think it's pretty clear that, that things work best when we have competition in the marketplace. Just like, you know, for any other business, if you have competition, it drives innovation, it keeps costs down. So unlike my opponent who seems to like to go towards single-payer, government-funded healthcare, I disagree with that. I do agree that there's times where it's needed, of course. We Minnesotans are very kind and compassionate people, and we support times when people who are in need, and we support giving benefits to them, as Teresa said, when they need it. I really think that if we ever went single payer, we would really, really be in a heap of trouble, even more so than my opponent Ethan has already put us in with our budget. They have increased taxes by $1 billion in the medical field, and a lot of that has even led to fraud. A very good friend of mine that I've been in contact with recently has a son who has autism, and the whole autism fraud, the legislature gave out all kinds of money to, to feed my children, but also on the medical side with the autism centers, which grew by hundreds of %, and no oversight whatsoever. And all of these kids were so hurt by it. And so, do I think there's guardrails in the medical community for government? Yes, I do, just like some of the other topics we talked about. But we absolutely cannot get away from private insurance in this format.
Thank you. And Amanda?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. I am so passionate about healthcare. My mom was a nurse, and we grew up in rural Wabasha, Minnesota, where we had a rural local hospital and clinic. And it has been so cool to watch that clinic fight off large systems, corporate healthcare, to stay local and to keep that care in Wabasha. So I'm so grateful and proud of that. I've also been a clinical lab scientist, and I've worked to collaborate and pass a law that ensures that when we are testing babies for very rare genetic diseases, that's covered by insurance. So parents can get the treatment they need faster, the answers they need faster, and those babies can start to get better. I was also fortunate to sit on the health committee for these past 2 years, and we've identified so many things broken in our healthcare system. And again, that one example is these large entities coming and gobbling up the small rural clinics. Through the work in the health committee, we've established the Prescription Drug Affordability Board to address affordable prescription drugs. We've capped insulin. People need their insulin to live, and we capped the price for that so people don't have to ration and risk their lives. And most recently, we also took on prior authorizations. Some of these insurance companies were approving prior authorizations as high as 98%. That tells me that the doctors know what they're doing. And we don't need that extra barrier for people to get the care they need. So now I would like to start fixing our broken healthcare system. I have the analytical thinking, the collaborative skills to start looking at whether we are getting what we deserve from our insurance plans, start looking at our managed care organizations, and start working to create a system that works for all Minnesotans.
Thank you. We've come to the conclusion of the question period. We're going to move on to closing statements. This time we'll start with Amanda, move to Teresa, then Ethan, and then Dwight. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks again so much for hosting, for moderating, for being here, participating in the audience, and for watching online. I'm very proud of working with our communities of Southern Maplewood and Woodbury to advocate for our community values. I very much appreciate the time, the sharing of stories from people, whether it was in person, over the phone, or via email. I look forward to continuing working with the business community of 47A. Our low unemployment rate, our skilled and educated workforce has led Minnesota to being named the 6th best state for business. And I will continue to support provisions to fund local economic development and support for our small business startups. But I know our work is not done. We need to start addressing big issues like affordable childcare because it's too expensive for families and it's keeping people out of the workforce. And we need to fix our broken healthcare system. I would like to continue to use my analytical thinking, my professional experience, community engagement to create and pass comprehensive policy. I invite you to check out my social media as well as my website, amandaformnhouse.com, and I look forward to earning your support and your vote this fall. Just a reminder, early voting has started right here in City Hall, and make sure your voice is heard via your vote by November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa.
I agree with Amanda. Thank you all so much for being here, watching online. Thank you, Gina, for moderating and the Chamber for hosting this. Let's not lose sight at what's at stake for this election. The DFL dominance in the legislature has been a study of careless, reckless spending free-for-all. The DFL genuinely believes that any problem in Minnesota the government should take care of, and it should be managed through an existing or even creating a new state agency by shoveling money also into DFL-aligned nonprofits. That's where the $17 billion surplus made up of your hard-earned dollars went, and your taxes were raised by 10%. DFL's solutions are always tied to more spending, more taxes, more fees, more regulations, more mandates, more red tape, more government oversight, and less freedom. The businesses, especially small businesses of Minnesota, like I said, they are the powerhouse for Minnesota. They generate 50% of our gross domestic product and are huge employers for the state. It's American businesses that create jobs, spark innovation, and provide opportunities for men, women, and teens to achieve financial success and independence. Here's a couple of timeless truths from Republican President Ronald Reagan. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And here's another great one. You can't be for big government, big taxes, and big bureaucracy and still be for the little guy. My name is Teresa Whitson. I'd appreciate your vote. My website is www.whitsonforhouse.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethan.
I want to take this opportunity to extend my invitation to Dwight as in regards to special needs, because I have a deaf and blind niece, and I myself have ADHD. And so when we talk about special needs, yes, Dwight, we need to work together to make that better for our Minnesotan families. To my community and to all of you, thank you for having me here today. I've been so honored and privileged to serve you for the last 2 years in the Minnesota House of Representatives. I'm asking for your vote and your support to send me back, to continue the work I said I would do, and to strengthen the legislation that I have already done. I love this work. It's the most rewarding job I've ever had. And serving this community gives me purpose and lets me fight for my children and your children, our families, and our future, whether it's for the soil, the water, the environment, for teachers, for childcare, for our seniors, and for our families. Those fight is inclusive regardless of what spectrum you are on, whether you're Republican or Democrat. Because in the center of the aisle of my heart is education, children, families, in my community. So I ask for your vote to send me back and have the privilege to serve you once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwight.
Yes. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. When I'm elected, I strongly desire to represent you well, and that goes for your small businesses and your employees and your customers. So if you're tired of the bickering and petty politics that we see in the current legislature, I invite you to vote for me so we can plot a positive course forward for Minnesota and for our families in a truly bipartisan fashion. We haven't seen that in 2 years. There's been a few hints of it in some committees, but we have not seen that. And I will listen and work with everybody in the legislature, and especially with the citizens of Woodbury to make this the best place we could possibly make it. I think together we can help our hardworking families and by providing relief for our seniors, for our low-income earners with tax breaks, with getting rid of the Social Security tax for income, with decreasing the lowest 2 tax rates. I want to help protect our children in schools. I want to promote clean energy. You know, voting for a carbon neutral 2040 without laying out a path forward is irresponsible. So I think we can do that by doubling our nuclear capacity. Woodbury's water must remain pure. I will always support pure water in Woodbury. And of course, we need to set the right climate for our small businesses to be competitive and innovative and to grow our economy and to grow jobs. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for a great evening. May God bless you, Minnesota, Woodbury, and everybody listening online tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That wraps up tonight's forum. I want to thank all of the candidates for taking time to be here and most sincerely for your interest in making our community a better place.